The morning sun spilled over the quiet streets of Manhattan, glinting off the glass windows of the high-rise apartments and cafes that lined the city's thoroughfares. Yet, inside one particular building, the bright light felt heavy and oppressive rather than warm. Jenna Bush Hager sat at her kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold in front of her, the steam curling upwards like the anxieties swirling in her mind. It had been a week of relentless headlines, social media storms, and whispered conversations. A story had emerged, one that had shaken Jenna deeply. Though she had faced public scrutiny before, this time was different. This time, it was personal, and the weight of it pressed down on her chest like a stone. She stared at her phone, scrolling through messages from friends, colleagues, and viewers who had grown to love her over the years. Some were encouraging, offering strength and solidarity. Others carried confusion, concern, or criticism. Each ping of the phone sent a jolt of anxiety through her. Normally, Jenna was poised, composed, the embodiment of grace under pressure. But today, her hands shook slightly. Her smile refused to form. Jenna's journey had never been simple. As the daughter of a former president, she had grown up in the spotlight, understanding at an early age that public life was a tightrope walk over the jagged rocks of scrutiny and expectation. Yet she had carved her own path, moving beyond the shadows of her family name to become a respected journalist, author, and mentor. Her warmth, honesty, and humor had endeared her to millions, and that had made this moment, this storm she now faced, even more jarring. The news had broken quietly at first, a subtle ripple in the vast ocean of information that inundated the world every second. But soon it had grown into a wave that threatened to pull her under. A misunderstanding in a past interview had resurfaced, blown out of context and amplified by social media algorithms. Despite her careful clarifications, the narrative had taken a life of its own. Rumors and speculations swirled, some innocuous, others cruel. Jenna's phone rang again, and this time she answered. "Jenna?" came the warm, familiar voice of her longtime friend and confidant, Emily. "I just wanted to check in. How are you holding up?" Jenna took a deep breath. "Honestly, I'm not sure. It's overwhelming. Everywhere I turn, there's a headline, a tweet, a comment. I feel like I can't breathe without someone judging me." Emily's voice was steady, grounding. "I know, Jenna, but remember, storms pass. You've weathered so many before, and you'll get through this too. You're not alone in this, not ever. We're all praying for you, rooting for you." The word praying struck a chord deep within Jenna. It wasn't just a polite gesture or empty sentiment. She felt it. The thousands of supporters who had sent messages, letters, even small gifts, all carried a single thread of hope and faith. They believed in her integrity, in her resilience, and for the first time that morning, Jenna felt a flicker of warmth in the cold, heavy atmosphere that had engulfed her. Her mind wandered back to the first moments when she had realized the weight of public life. She had been a child, standing on the White House lawn, watching the press swarm around her parents. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, questions flying like arrows. Even then, she had sensed the scrutiny wasn't always fair, but she had learned to rise above it, to find her voice in the chaos. Now, decades later, she was facing a different kind of battle. The battlefield was digital, intangible, yet every comment and critique felt like a real blow. But she knew, deep in her heart, that this moment, as painful as it was temporary. She stood up and moved to the window, staring out at the bustling streets below. The city was alive with stories, millions of lives intersecting, each with its own struggles and triumphs. Jenna realized that she wasn't the only one facing difficulty, that every person carried unseen burdens, and somehow that thought both humbled and comforted her. Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from a fan she had never met, a stranger who had watched her journey on television and read her books. It read, "We inspire you every day. Stay strong. We're praying for you." Jenna's eyes welled up with tears, not of sadness, but of gratitude. The power of human connection, even across screens and miles, was tangible. She realized that her role wasn't just to share stories or report news, it was to be a source of hope, a reminder that even in difficult moments, grace and perseverance could shine through. She sat back down, opened her laptop, and began to write a note to her supporters. Her fingers trembled at first, but as she typed, a clarity emerged. She didn't need to explain every detail of the misunderstanding. She didn't need to justify herself endlessly. What she needed to do was acknowledge the pain, express gratitude for the support, and reaffirm her commitment to honesty and integrity. "Dear friends," she began, her heart guiding her words, "these past few days have been challenging. I've faced criticism, confusion, and the weight of public scrutiny. But in the midst of this storm, I've felt something extraordinary: the power of your prayers, your messages, and your unwavering support. You remind me that even in difficult moments, there is hope. Thank you for standing with me. Together, we rise." As she hit send, a wave of relief washed over her. It wasn't an instant solution to the storm raging online, but it was a step, a small, meaningful act of connection and courage. The rest of the day unfolded slowly. Calls from colleagues, interviews rescheduled, messages of support continued to pour in. Each one reminded Jenna of the human capacity for kindness, even amidst chaos. And as evening descended over the city, she allowed herself a rare moment of quiet reflection. She thought about the lessons she had learned over the years, the importance of resilience, the strength found in vulnerability, and the profound impact of community. She realized that public figures, often seen as invincible, were in fact deeply human. They experienced fear, doubt, and pain just like anyone else, and it was in these moments
that their true character was revealed, not through perfection, but through courage, humility, and connection. Later that night, Jenna walked out onto her apartment balcony. The city stretched endlessly before her, a tapestry of lights and movement. She inhaled deeply, letting the cool air fill her lungs, and for the first time in days, she smiled without effort. The storm hadn't vanished, but she had found her anchor. She had her faith, her family, her friends, and the countless supporters who believed in her. She whispered a quiet prayer of her own, a simple acknowledgement of the love and hope surrounding her. And in that moment, she understood something vital. Difficult moments, no matter how isolating, were never endured alone. There was always a thread of light, a hand reaching out, a prayer whispered in solidarity. The next morning, Jenna woke with renewed determination. She returned to work, to her writing, and to her daily routines, carrying with her the invisible armor of support and prayer. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, inevitably, but she also knew that they were not insurmountable. In interviews, she spoke with honesty and compassion, addressing concerns without defensiveness. In social media posts, she shared glimpses of her daily life, her joys and struggles, reminding people of her humanity. And behind the scenes, she continued to write, to mentor, and to inspire, holding fast to the values that had always guided her. Over the following weeks, the intensity of the public scrutiny began to wane. Misunderstandings were clarified, rumors dissipated, and the supportive messages far outweighed the critical ones. Jenna felt stronger, more resilient, and more connected to the people who had stood by her. She reflected on the experience often, recognizing it as a pivotal moment in her journey. It had tested her patience, her courage, and her faith, but it had also reaffirmed the profound impact of empathy, kindness, and community. Jenna knew that her story, like the stories of millions of others, was not defined by the difficulties she faced, but by the grace, perseverance, and humanity with which she navigated them. And she carried that lesson forward, not just for herself, but for everyone who looked to her as a source of inspiration. In the end, it wasn't about the headlines or the criticism, but about connection, about the unseen prayers of strangers and friends alike, lifting her when she felt most alone, about the shared understanding that life's challenges, though painful, could be transformed into moments of growth, gratitude, and grace. And as Jenna closed her laptop that evening, she smiled once more, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in days. The difficult moment had passed, but the lessons and the love remained.